Hello again and welcome to Winning with the Wrangler with Dick Powell and the Leadership Corner. We're brought to you by Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training and Development, where our passion is building leaders of today and tomorrow. Leaders, I'm going to look at a subject today that is probably not the most popular one in the world. You see, we all go through different ages and stages, and the big thing about that is we have we change our views. We change the way we're thinking with those ages and stages. The thing that does not change, though, is the picture that we look at. Now, I was talking to some other leaders around the country, and we were all discussing how does a leader really see more than the rest. A good friend and I started talking, and we started really pounding it down, and we were on an airplane, and so we started actually thinking about the pilot and the co-pilot and all the people that were involved in getting the plane up and off the ground and keeping it in the air and then making sure we got down safely. Now, in our great big world, everyone, and I do mean everyone, has a different view of how they see and feel about what is going on around them. And that's how I really started to put this thing together, this story of the plane flying high above the clouds. Most of us have had that experience where we sat on the plane and really didn't think about a whole lot other than there was someone who was going to fly us from one place to the other. I know that I've gotten so busy that I'll get on the plane and sit down and start back to work and don't even realize that we're in the air until someone comes around and asks me if I want something to drink, a cold drink. You know what? Let's go over exactly how that all happened. You see, the day started as any other day. The ground crew, of course, had come in early to service and check out the plane. You know, that's a big job to just go through those kinds of checklists to make sure everything is ready to go. It's equipment, you know. They checked all the equipment and make sure it's all working, it all looked good, that they didn't see any leaks or any visible things. They went around, checked all the hatches, they checked all the parts and pieces, all the batteries, and you name it, they did it. They've got a checklist for everything that's on the aircraft. Now, the fueling process takes a little longer because you need to take and put a grounding strap to the plane and then start the fueling process. Dragging out the big hoses, hooking them up to the wing fuselage so they can pump in the fuel. But on this day, the fueling process went without a hitch, and the paperwork was all signed off. Now, I will bet you many of you have watched a pilot do a walk-around, and you thought to yourself, well, didn't the ground crew already do that? Well, the ground crew did. But you see, the pilot has a different set of checkoff lists, and it's pretty amazing to watch how they do it. So pay close attention next time you see it. The pilot, of course, comes into the hangar if you're lucky enough to use a private jet. And they come in the hangar and he did his walk around. Now, here's what I saw. I saw this pilot touching every part of the plane and checking each part off on his written checklist. He complimented the ground crew and then went aboard the plane to start the inside cockpit procedures. Now, pay personal attention here. He complimented the ground crew on their good job at preparing the plane. Now, he's only been on the outside of the plane. He hasn't been on the inside, but now he's going to go up those wonderful steps and go into the plane. And here he finds the co-pilot was already in the right-hand seat and started to run through the checklist when the pilot came on board. Again, another checklist. Again, everything the pilot and co-pilot went through and they checked off and checked out, everything was ready for takeoff. I mean, everything was ready to go. But there was still more to do. You see, the flight crew came on board and went through the cabin, checking all the seats for cleanliness, ensuring the magazines were properly stowed, those little wonderful bags that if you get sick were ready to be used if needed. The refreshments were all ready and the supplies that, were all on board. And the door to the plane opened and the passengers started to come in and take their seats. You see, the passengers only were really ready to come in, get in their seats, get buckled up, and be ready for takeoff. So many things had happened before they had even gotten there, didn't they? The view is always changing from depending on where you're sitting and what you were looking at. Now, as the door closed, the pilot radioed the tower, and the tower gave them the runway to take off on, and so they put the throttles up and started to taxi from the hangar out onto the tarmac. At the end of the runway, think about it. At the end of the runway, we're getting to take off. We've already gone through the ground crew checklist. We've gone through the walk-around checklist. The pilot and co-pilot has taken just copious times going through their checklist, and the flight crew went through their checklist, and then the flight crew went through a checklist with the passengers. And then the tower went through theirs, and all was ready to go. The pilot pushed the throttle forward, and then in a panic pulled it in reverse, and the plane shuddered, and the co-pilot yelled, and the passengers were thrown in a jumble mass. But here's what the pilot saw. Let me go through what each person in the plane saw first. Well, the ground crew saw nothing because it was their break time. They had already headed back in the hangar. The passengers saw only what they could see from their tiny windows, just blue skies and other airplanes. For them, it was just going to be a gorgeous day. The flight crew saw nothing because they were busy doing their jobs and getting ready for takeoff. And the tower saw an unauthorized plane descending quickly with no warning or radio transmission. There was no time to alert the pilot. The co-pilot was looking out the right side window and straight ahead, attending to his duties as he should be. But you see, the pilot was looking all around, left, right, ahead, and up. That is when he saw the other plane descending at a fast pace, and he calculated in his mind that if he did not stop his plane in time, a crash was imminent. The yelling and screaming at the pilot drowned out the noise and the near miss of the airplane. The questions flew quickly, and blame was being placed on the pilot's lack of knowledge and expertise. Before anything was discovered or even asked why, the blame had already started to appear. Now the pilot taxied the plane back to the hangar and stood there at the doorway as the angry passengers got off the plane. Not showing the fear and shaking hands at his sides, he nodded his head as each one of them said something as they left by, most of them not kind. When all had left, including the flight crew and the co-pilot, the tower engineer came on board. He found the pilot sitting at the controls. The engineer sat in the left-hand seat and said, "What made you look out and see the other plane today?" The pilot answered slowly, "It is my job as the leader to always check, recheck, look left, look right, look forward, look back, look up, to make sure all is well before every takeoff and every landing. You see, everyone has a different view from where they sit. The difference is the leader takes a 360-degree view and understanding. Sometimes this means making the tough calls on a moment's notice. So when you start questioning what someone else is thinking or seeing, you need to be sitting in their seat and seeing what they are seeing. And there again, when others start questioning you, the leader, of what you're doing and why you're doing it, invite them to sit in your chair. Invite them to learn what you're looking at and for. You see, this is a part of leadership that we don't often talk about. It's the type of leadership that's called coaching and mentorship. It's the type of leadership that is learned most times in the hard way. And I don't say that lightly at all. You see, what I found out when I sat in the pilot's seat is that I could see fairly clearly to my left, not so much to my right. I usually depended on my co-pilot who sat in that right-hand seat to give me all the information over there. But I found myself oftentimes looking up before I did anything. And that in itself started a new thought process of seeing farther and seeing more and bringing people in and around me to help me see that 360-degree view. You see, the people behind you can see something entirely different. The people on your right, on your left, I'm not going to say underneath, but work with you, work around you. Leaders who put everyone else on their team and ask for their opinions and encourage questions. What disturbed me about this whole story that I told you today about the pilot is the immediate check of blame that we do in our society today. Without knowing all the facts, we made a decision from sitting in our chair where we could not see the 360 degrees, but we made a decision. We made a choice. And that's going to be the second part of our topic today. So going back over this, what I really want you to take away from people have different views because people see things from different parts of their reality is this. Remember, when you question, to put yourself in the other person's seat and see what they're seeing. Now, the next thing we're going to look at today is we're going to look at something that I hold near and dear, because we're going to start talking about consequences. And consequences, I'm going to tell you, isn't something that we normally talk about. It's not something we normally discuss. We don't even find it discussed in the workplace. We don't find it discussed in our churches. We don't find it discussed sometimes even in our own homes. And this is an epidemic, I believe, that is going across our world, that the unknown of the consequences of every choice and action that you do has a consequences. Well, have you ever in your life ever wanted to do something, felt really compelled to do it, but your spidey sense said, wait, hold on, the consequences are way too high and the price is way too big to be paid? Now, I bet you each and every one of us, I know when I was growing up, that was called my Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder. You can call it whatever you want. But consequences started to add up even at a young age. I had some consequences. If I didn't take and do the chores, I didn't get paid, which meant I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. Couldn't buy that new ball glove or go to the movies, my friends. Consequences. Act up in school, probably going to take and get some consequences, both at school and at home. You see, I learned awful early that you had to follow the rules. And if you didn't like the rules, my grandfather always just said this: if you don't like the rules, work to change them, but do it through the proper channels. Didn't quite understand that when he was telling a 10, 11-year-old, but now that I got a few years and a few miles on me, I understand quite well. But the consequences he was talking about were both good and bad, no doubt about it. Now, there were some consequences that I paid the price for. You know, broken words, where I gave my promise to someone and didn't keep it, and the consequence was losing a friend or losing something else. Broken bones, yeah. Wanted to be Evel Knievel, thought I could take and jump that ditch. Didn't quite work out that way. Loss of license, never happened to me, but a good friend of mine. One too many. Consequences. Good friends have lost their marriage from doing something they knew they shouldn't do. Loss of money. And of course the big one, the loss of life. Consequences. Things that go on in yours and my life, both in our business world and in our home world. You see, we make choices every moment of the day based on the consequences we have both experienced and or hopefully learned, either from ourselves or someone else. Now, these experiences start at an early age. Don't put your hand on that red stove, you know. A cup of coffee's hot. Don't spill it on yourself. Consequences. You know, but the thought comes first. Boy, I'd like to do that. I really want to light that firecracker. And then the choice. Well, maybe I shouldn't do that. And then either action or no action. But it's a conscious choice. And that conscious choice brings on the consequence, either good or not so good. I have to tell you that when I've listened to my little man on my shoulder, my spidey sense, whatever you want to say, or even my gut instinct, kept me out of a lot of trouble. Negative consequences. So how do we teach this? How do we share this? How do we install this in people? At work? At home? At play? I ran a large corporation, and every year about school times, I'd have to buy extra pencils and pens and paper clips and pads of paper and all sorts of things, and I had to resort to actually locking the cabinet one day. And people said, "Why are you doing that?" And I said, "Well, we're ordering. So, are you guys using all this stuff?" But you see, they thought it was okay to go ahead and take it home to their children. And the consequence was, well, I locked the door. Because the consequence on the other side was it was costing my company a lot of money to support their children. And the consequence really boiled down to thievery. So I could have fired them all for theft. That didn't seem like the way to make things happen. Are you understanding what this is? This thing with consequences. This thing that we do every day when we make choices on how we're going to live our life. So again, I asked the question to some of my higher learned people because, I don't have all the answers, just most of them. So how do we, as leaders of ourselves, learn how to make those sometimes split-second choices? First of all, I'm going to encourage you to place yourself with good role models. Now, For someone who did not grow up with good role models, I have to tell you, I had to search some out, and that wasn't as easy as it sounded. Some of those role models came right out of books where I read and tapes I listened to and seminars I went to. But there were some people in my close personal activities that I made sure that I hung around. So place yourself with good role models. And I'm going to tell you what, encourage people that you're going to be a good role model. The second thing is read leadership and accountability books. Leadership and accountability go hand to hand. You see, one can't be without the other. If there's no accountability, there's no leadership. And if there's no leadership, it's pretty hard to hold yourself accountable. They go hand in hand. But reading is something that you're going to need to do from ever. You see, ongoing continuous learning is exactly what good leaders do and encourage. I give away a lot of books to people to read, and then I often call them in a week or so, hey, how you doing on that book? And it's amazing, the most of them, because I have given them a signed book, they're reading it. They're going to start putting that into place in their life. Number 3, train yourself to stop, think, ask questions, research the choice before responding or taking action. Leaders, I know that this is one of the hardest things to do. So many times in business, we're faced with things that need to be split seconds and need to be made decisions quickly. And the choice is made not just for ourselves, but every employee who is working with us. You see, it's not just our family anymore. When you have employees, it's their families too. So training yourself to stop and ask questions and to think and do the research. I'm going to just tell you that that's one of the most important things you're going to learn today. Just like the pilot that we talked about before, going with his checklist, you're going to make your own checklist and do the research. Find out everything you can about the situation or the opportunity. Now, I'm going to also encourage you to be prepared, which means when you are prepared to make quick decisions and quick choices, you can, because you've done the research already. You've already prepared yourself to make that decision. Is this easy? Folks, I'm not telling you it's easy. I'm telling you that if we don't take the time to teach this, that we're going to be in a bigger trouble than we are now. The fourth thing I'm going to encourage each and every person, leaders, followers, anybody, it doesn't matter. When you're placing yourself with good role models, find yourself a good coach, a good mentor, or a trusted friend. Now, the reason I say that is if you are placing yourself with good role models, hopefully some of them become your trusted friends. Hopefully some of them will become mentors to you. The other part of this, though, finding a good coach to help you correlate all that information and put it together so you're ready and prepared to make good, solid choices, knowing the consequences, you will be better off as a leader. And you will also be that shining star and bringing the brightness to other people, saying, well, look what they're doing. Maybe I should be doing that also. Now, one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do, this fifth thing, is something I've done for years now. And I know people say, well, gee, Dick, you're in your mid-60s, you're still doing this stuff. And I am. I, way back when, joined an accountability group. And this accountability group kept me on the right path, so to speak, as a leader, but it also showed those around me that I was willing to go and bare my soul, but take some good criticism, positive criticism from folks and learn. And guess where they came from? That accountability group were people, those good role models that I was hanging around. And I'll tell you what, a lot of them were good, trusted friends, and one was one of my best mentors. So you see how this all starts to happen. They helped me get prepared to make decisions that were going to happen both in my personal life and decisions that I was going to have to make in my business world. Those of you out there like me who run your own company know very quickly that you wear many different hats, and when you're putting them on, sometimes one just doesn't fit very well. And you need an accountability group to hold you steady. Wow. This is some heavy stuff, isn't it? I guess I better make some fun in here pretty quick. Number 6, the last one on this list. Know that it is a lifelong endeavor. I think that's the best one. You know, my wife said to me the other day, she says, some of those things you've decided to do, the consequences weren't all that fun, were they? I said, well, they weren't fun then, but I should sure laugh at them now. And, of course, she pointed to a couple of those scars on my legs and whatnot, and she said, I'm not so sure they're really fun. I've watched you get up in the morning. Now, that's kind of funny in my world, but let me tell you something. Those consequences weren't real good. But I took the risk. Consequences will be paid now or later. I'm paying for some of those consequences for doing not so smart things, hurting my body, being a lineman all those years. But think about this. What are you leaving as a legacy? What do other people see? How do they watch you make decisions and choices? Do they see you rolling around the consequences in your head and saying, that's just too big a price to pay? You see, consequences can be good, and the price to be paid is worth everything you own or possess. One of those consequences could be a long, long relationship with a significant other. 43 years this year, me and Miss Robin. How about a long relationship with your child? A rewarding career, good relationships with friends and extended family, and living a life of integrity, trust, and honor, leaving a legacy others want to follow. You see, consequences really can be good, can't they? In today's time, we look and hear and read and listen to so many negatives. In the newspaper, radio, TV, home, and even at church, I'm encouraging you to look and hear, read, and listen to the positives of the world around you and pass them on. Decisions and choices made with positive outcomes will always bring us to where we want to be. I'm going to tell you what, this has been a big day for me today. This has been a wonderful talk. First, we talked about the pilot and co-pilot and all the people on the plane and what they saw and how they were looking at it. And then we looked at consequences in our life and how to go about getting them on the right path so you can not only teach and train those around you, but you can live that way yourself. Now, on behalf of myself, Dick Powell, and the whole Leadership Corner team, we want to say thank you for being a part of today's program. Our goal is that you have received a nugget of wisdom and guidance that will help you build your leadership ability. As always, if you have a question, you can give us a call here at 727-422-1833. You can send me an email at dick, D-I-C-K, at leadershipwrangler.com, or you can even go onto our website and set your very own appointment with us. Go to www.leadershipwrangler.com, Set your appointment. We'll be back with you as fast as we can, and we're going to make it all as much fun as we can. Now, until next time, this is Dick Powell of DW the Wrangler saying, ride hard, ride fast.